Hello everyone, thank you for coming to my presentation. I really appreciate you all being here today. My name is Nicole Henderson if you don't know me, and my topic this year that I studied was Parks and Recreation. So the quote that I chose this year to kind of help me guide me through my studies and everything, I chose, "Vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time, and vision with action can change the world." I chose this quote because I believe that vision and action are both very important elements to the Parks and Recreation world, and I really wanted to learn how to apply both of those to the knowledge and skills that I gained throughout the year. I'm going to start off just telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a senior here at Frisco High School. I grew up in Springfield, Missouri, and I didn't move to Frisco, Texas until halfway through my sophomore year. I was homeschooled until 8th grade. That was my very first year in public school. I have two little sisters, Jordan, who's on the right and in 6th grade this year, and Caitlin, who's on the left and in 4th grade. Some of my hobbies lately have been learning foreign languages. I'm taking a Mandarin Chinese course this year, and I've taken several Spanish classes in the past. I also really enjoy drawing and writing lately, so I've been having some fun with that. I also work at the Frisco Athletic Center. I've started working there back in November, and I'll talk more about that later because it's actually related to my ISM topic. So as I said, my topic of study is Parks and Recreation, and for those of you who are wondering, no, it's not because of the TV show. I get asked that constantly, and though I do love the show, that wasn't my reasoning behind choosing the topic. Last year I was in an AP Human Geography course, and I really enjoyed it, and one of the things that we started learning about was urban planning. Around the same time that I was learning this topic, I heard of ISM, and I thought it was a really amazing opportunity, so I applied for the program, and I also started becoming really passionate about the whole urban planning because it made me really excited about trying to figure out like how cities are planned and how to make them efficient and really benefit the people living there. So I started this year off with urban planning, but then I started realizing it wasn't really for me. The projects and everything were 10, 20 years in the future, and that wasn't really what I was looking for. Instead, I really liked smaller projects that I could get accomplished more quickly. So when I stumbled across Parks and Recreation, that was the exact thing that I was looking for. And more specifically, I've been studying park construction and design. My very first interview that I had was with Mr. Brian Bristow. He's the assistant director at the City of Allen Parks Department. From him I learned a lot about how the Parks Department works with a variety of elements. Science, history, art, business, wildlife, communications, community service. There's all sorts of things that come into play, and that really excited me because I didn't want to be stuck in a job where I was only doing one thing or learning about one specific topic. I also learned about the wide range of projects that are involved in Parks and Recreation. I originally thought that Parks and Rec would be just the traditional parks and trails and such, but really there's a lot more to it. For example, back in last year, I believe, the City of Allen had this burst in this one flock of bird population that grew exponentially, and they all settled in this one residential neighborhood. So these residents were constantly calling the Parks Department, complaining about all these birds and the smell and the noise that were coming from them. So the Parks Department had to send people out to the residential area and analyze the birds' movements and flying patterns and everything and try to figure out ways to prevent it from happening next year. They also found a historical dam that they didn't know about, and so they built a historical site around that. So it's not just the traditional park and trail that you would think of, they actually deal with a lot of things. So I thought that was really cool. I also learned about the staff and how different their backgrounds could be. So I was meeting people who had teaching backgrounds, business, finance backgrounds, landscape architecture. Everyone has different knowledge that they can bring to the table, and I thought that was really cool too. My second interview was with Mr. Dudley Raymond. He's the Planning and Business Development Manager for the Frisco Parks and Rec Department. Basically, his job consists of long-range planning, only 2 to 5 years in the future. So not like the 10 and 20 for urban planning, but just enough to really have an idea of what the city's going to be like, and he has to take into consideration the residents' needs and wants for the future whenever he's trying to decide where parks are going to be placed as the city grows. He also takes a huge part in helping hire contractors, which I'll talk more about that later. And one of the questions I asked him was what one of the biggest sacrifices are for him and his job. And he told me that sometimes working for the government, it can give you less respect and less pay compared to what he could be earning at a different private firm. So But he followed that up with saying that he loves his job so much because it's an opportunity for him to serve his community, and that's why he loves it, and that's why he does it. So it's worth the less pay and sometimes the less recognition that he receives. My third interview was with Mr. Rick Wieland. He's the Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Frisco. His whole job is basically centered around management positions, so he does a lot of paperwork, conducts a lot of meetings. He doesn't really get to go to project sites very often, which he says is disappointing, but sometimes there's just so much other stuff for him to do that he doesn't really get one-on-one opportunity to go look at things that are being built and being accomplished. But he told me that he loves his job because of the family atmosphere that they have, which when you go there, you can tell everyone's just really happy to be around everyone, and there's no competition, everyone loves each other, and everyone wants to just help each other build the city up and really make a difference. So he loves that, and then he suggested to me that I start learning more about all three areas of the Parks Department. So there's the Parks, Recreation, and the maintenance side. The maintenance side gets a lot less recognition because it's not really in the title, for one, and for two, they're kind of the people that go and help upkeep the parks that are built. Something that I really figured out was that the Parks Department, they're the ones who actually go and build the facilities and build the parks and places for the recreation to come in and put people in. So the recreation side brings activities in these parks and areas that the Parks Department builds, and then the maintenance comes and helps upkeep everything and making it look nice and enjoyable. So it's really neat seeing how all three of them kind of harmonize each other and really come into play together. My fourth interview is with Miss Marcy Jones. She's the Recreation Service Manager for the City of Frisco. She basically oversees and supervises different employees at the recreational facilities, such as the Frisco Athletic Center, Senior Center, and then also citywide events like Merry Main Street, Frosty 5K, the Daddy-Daughter Dance, things like that. As soon as you meet her, she's extremely upbeat and enthusiastic about work. It's absolutely amazing, really. You can just tell automatically that she really genuinely cares about people, and that's her whole goal with her job. She talked a lot about customer service and how her whole goal is to watch people walk away and be happy and really feel like they're connected to the community. So some of the advice she gave me was to get more job experience in the field and then also do more research like how I'm doing with ISM. So it's funny because she actually gave me a tour of the Frisco Athletic Center, which there's a picture of it on the bottom right of the screen. That is now where I work because she inspired me to go apply for a job there. And whenever I was being interviewed for the job position, the two people interviewing me actually recognized me from when I came in and interviewed Miss Marcy. So I think that's part of the reason why I got the job. So that was really exciting, and I absolutely love it. Another thing she told me, one last piece of advice she gave me before she left, was that I really should love what I do, because if you don't love what you do, you're not going to enjoy your life as much. It's going to be much more beneficial and you're going to get a lot more done if you love what you're doing, you're passionate about it. My fourth interview is with Mr. Califerni. He's the Parks Planning and Capital Projects Superintendent for the City of Frisco. Basically, he's a lot like Mr. Dudley Raymond's position. Both of them work together to oversee the bigger projects, do a little bit of long-term planning and everything, and they go oversee what the contractors are doing at the projects and make sure it's all running smoothly and on time. He has a very diverse knowledge of construction and design from his background, where he went to school and the different firms he worked at. Half of the time he's in the office and the other half of the time he's out on project sites, which I found to be awesome because it's that perfect balance of being outdoors and then being indoors with things, so I thought that was exciting. And something I learned from him that really blew me away was that landscape architecture makes up 90% of a park. Now, before this interview, I'd never even really heard of landscape architecture, so I didn't really know much about it, but I was like, wow, it must be important if it's 90% of a park. So from him, I really started looking into that, which I'll talk more about soon as well. And one of the pieces of advice that he gave me was that you have to be able to take criticism in a positive way. Sometimes it can be really hard because design is personal, it's something that you create, and if people criticize that, it can be hard to take it with an open mind. That's something I really need to learn how to do, is take it in a positive manner and really let that help me rather than make me feel bad about myself. So here's a quote that I pulled that really stood out for me from that interview. He said, "When the problem gets solved and no one knows that you were there and involved, that means your job was a success. So when I build something, everyone talks about how it looks nice. But if it's messed up, they actually try to find who did it so they can have someone fix it. So if no one hears anything, I've done a fantastic job. This absolutely blew me away because it's so accurate. We go to parks and stuff all the time. We go see the things that people created, but we never really ask who made this, who decided to make this path where it goes, or make it out of these colored pavers. No one asks those things. The only time that we really go and try to find like who created these things is whenever we see something that's wrong with it, like if it's deteriorating or if something's messed up with it. That's when we go find the creator. So I thought that was really awesome, and that really made me think twice about what I want to do and how I want to put myself into the community in a way that's not trying to like self-glorify or glorify myself, but in a way that people don't even realize that I was there and I was helping. So I chose Mr. Kyle to be my mentor because he was I felt like we really connected, and with his background it was very similar to what I was wanting to do. So he studied landscape architecture at Louisiana State University, and he's worked for several private firms in the past, and then he started working at the Frisco Parks Department back in 2013. So he's been there for a while. He has big experience in Parks and Rec, but then he also has experience elsewhere, which is really nice. So, and our mentor visits basically consist of us visiting project sites, looking through plans for sites, and then talking about my final product. Some of the different places that we visited several times would be the Frisco Athletic Center. They are expanding the outdoor aquatics area, so I've got to go out there about 2 or 3 times and see the progress that they're making on it and really look at what the contractors are doing whenever they're building and pouring concrete and such. Then the second place I got to go is the community park behind Independence High School that they started making. I've only been there once so far, and it was back when it was just at the foundation. So it's all dirt and then holes and stuff, and they were putting rebar in. But they actually just completed it, so I'm going to go back soon and get to see like what it was from when it was nothing to now something. So that's going to be fun. I've also visited the Veterans Memorial in Frisco Commons Park. I've been there several times, and before I went, I actually got a look at the plans for it. So I got to look in detail at all the little things that they were planning on putting in there, and then go look at it being built and watch it actually transform into the plans in real life. So that was neat. And then I've also gone to the Harold Baucus Park and watched them build some baseball fields. So that was also different, but really interesting. During my mentorship, these are some of the key things that I've really learned that have really stood out for me. The first thing is I got this hammered into me multiple times by everyone that I would talk to at the Parks Department. Almost every single mentor visit, they talk about how it's either quality control or making everything look intentional. That's like their whole goal there. They have to go to the sites and make sure contractors are doing a good job and be sure that everything is going smoothly and find errors before they actually become big errors. So they go in and correct things, find solutions for problems, and make everything look intentional. About 80-70% of the time, things don't go the way that are planned, so they have to be able to find ways to solve the problems in a way that looks like it was meant to be that way. So it's really amazing. It's kind of like a puzzle piece or something where you're trying to figure out how to put it all together and still make it look really awesome and great. Another thing I learned was that you always have to be able to defend your design. So you have to explain why you put a path where you did, why you chose the type of plants that you chose. So that was something I really had to take into consideration when making my final product. We also talked a lot about the process of hiring contractors. So they have a huge part in the development because the Parks Department, they come in with the plans that they want for the park and everything in detail, like a giant instruction manual for them. And then the city has a bidding event where different contractors can bid on the plans and bid to be able to come and work for the city. So whoever bids the lowest is by law going to be the person who actually comes in and does all the building. So there's like a head general contractor, and he's kind of in charge of hiring all the little contractors because they're contractors for absolutely everything, whether it be like masonry, piping, it can be concrete, anything that you can think of, there is a contractor for that. So my mentor's job is to go and talk to the head contractor about 2 times a month and really see the progress what they're doing and have meetings with them and make sure that everything that they're doing is going correctly. But physically, all the contractors are doing the actual labor and work into building these things. Something my mentor said that really stuck out to me at one of our visits was that parks bring people close to nature without sticking them in the poison ivy. I thought this was humorous, but also extremely true. As humans, we love being around nature. That's something that we like seeing around us, whether it be just a little bit. And some people just really don't enjoy the inconvenience of going out in the middle of the woods and camping and being around all the bugs and poison ivy. So parks give a convenient way for people to get close to nature without making it to where it's unenjoyable for those who don't enjoy that sort of stuff. And the other thing I learned about was funding for the city. So there's 3 different forms of funding that they mainly get money for projects. First was for bonds. So they get a lot of bonds that are like for a 5-year period to help pay for projects. And there's also the Community Development Corporation, and they basically go and they, whenever they help raise the money for it. And then the Park Dedication Fund, they tax, like if a person comes in and buys land and are going to build like apartments on it, they have to tax them for that land to help go towards the city, or the person who's buying the land can choose to sell it to the city for them to use. So it's kind of interesting learning about that whole process and seeing where the city gets the money to actually carry out these projects for the residents. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the recreation side since I do work at the athletic center. I love working at the athletic center because the environment is very, very happy. It's very family oriented. There's not really much competition going on there. So everyone's just kind of working together to help the people who are coming into the facility. One of the biggest things was customer service. I come in contact with tons of people absolutely every day, asking all sorts of questions. Some of them are having bad days, some of them are having good days, so I have to learn how to communicate with people in an effective way and really show them that I'm caring about them. Something I learned from one of my coworkers is about becoming proactive about my learning. They really pushed me to start finding solutions to problems before the problems even occur. So he really pressured me into being like, okay, so what if this scenario came up and this person was asking about this? What would you do? So then I have to go find a solution for that and really research through our policies and through the different systems that we have in the computer to try to figure out what I would do and how to handle that situation before it even happens to me. So that's been really awesome to learn, and I feel like that's something I can apply anywhere in my life as I keep getting older and going places. I've also been learning a lot about the different recreational activities and facilities that the city offers. It blows my mind how much we have. We have tons and tons and tons of swim lessons, like more than you could ever think of, which people always complain about how there's too few swim lessons when there's just a lot of people wanting them. We have different sports events and sports complexes that people go to and practice sports at. We have citywide events like the Merry Main Street, the Texas Winter Games, the Easter Egg Extravaganza, which I got to work at both of those, and that was a really fun opportunity. I loved getting to see the people actually interact with what the city had done for them. So at the Easter egg thing, I actually got to be one of those people who threw all the eggs all over the fields, and that was a great time. And then I got to watch all the children come and Easter egg hunt in the middle of these fields after it had just got done raining. And it was awesome getting to see just how happy everyone was and helping take down the event, seeing how much success there was from it. So I love being a part of the city, and the recreation side is definitely something that I love being a part of. For my individual research, that was a huge part of ISM, since a lot of what we learn is based off of what we go and research ourselves, outside of like the mentorship and everything. So one of the things that I did was on environmental interaction and its benefits on us as people. And I read a lot of studies and articles about children who play outside versus children who play indoors. So children who play outside have been proven to have, they're usually more imaginative, and they have a lot more exposure to all their different senses rather than just like sight and hearing. Like if they were indoors, like playing video games or TV, those are the only ones that are appealing to them. Whereas if they're outdoors, they get all the senses appealed to. And so that really helps with their skill building and their problem solving as they grow. They're also usually more physically fit than kids who stay indoors. So it's cool and interesting to read about that. Another research that I did was on landscape architecture of the New York High Line, which was one of my absolutely favorite things to read about and look at photos of, because it's absolutely beautiful. Those are some photos of it right there. I wish I could have fit a lot more because it's just so beautiful. But the whole concept of it was taking an abandoned strip of train tracks that was raised above the ground and transforming it into something that people could come and gather at. So the whole thing was about taking something that was considered worthless and undesirable that people wanted to like get rid of or change into parking and transform it into something where people can come and look at this aesthetic value in the middle of a giantly dense population in a city. And so seeing how that affected a lot of people's lives and really how beautiful it turned out really inspired me to think more about landscape architecture and consider that as a future goal. I also studied a little bit on the Frisco Parks and Recreation Master Plan from back in 2006. It was really cool getting to see the maps of Frisco from back then because it was definitely a lot smaller, and it provided a list of every single park that was in the city, as well as all the things that they had in it, like the count of benches and the number of pavilions and such. So here's some figures from that. There are 28 neighborhood parks, 6 community parks, 2 special use parks, 19 playgrounds, 19 pavilions, and over 3 miles of trail, which all of that has grown tremendously in the past several years. So, and the new master plans either just came out or is getting ready to come out, so I'm really excited to look at that and compare how much it's grown. I also studied a little bit about the Americans with Disability Act because I hear about that all the time when I'm on different sites. Basically, the act requires the city and whoever's building it, like different public areas, to make it where there's where people with disabilities can have equal access to everything that people without disabilities can have. So that means like there's ramps that can only have a certain degree of like ramp up, and then there has to be handrails in certain places, and sidewalks have to be pretty wide. There's like all these specific measurements for all of it. So I had to take that into consideration when I was making my final product. And then also they have a lot of rules for parking lots and like van accessibility and everything. So halfway through the year, I got to do an original works project, which this was super fun. I decided to try to answer the question, what makes a park successful? So I chose 10 of the top most successful parks, according to me, and then some other people I talked to and my mentor. So one of the things I really figured out really soon after I started the project is that it's really hard to compare how successful a park is like compared to another park, since every single park is on a different scale of success within itself. So, but the main things that I really found in the most successful parks is that there's a high level of public use. It's very accessible in multiple different ways. It meets the community's needs very well, depending on like the different populations and like whether it's an older population or a younger population or whatever that is, really meeting that and coming to meet that need. And then also having a diverse level of activities to help attract different people. So 2 of the examples I'll give you are the Central Park in New York City, New York, as most people have already heard of, and then Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, Texas. So Central Park is one of the biggest, most well-known parks ever because it was the very first majorly landscaped public park. So it was the foundation for like landscape architecture and everything. So anytime I talk to anyone who is studying landscape architecture, they usually mention Central Park because it was such a huge revolutionary park for them. It's one of the leaders in the urban park movement and public spaces, as well as quality of life movement. So that really had a big effect on the rest of the United States. Another reason why it was really successful was the fact that it has a hierarchy of transportation. So there's different paths of travel for the different modes of transportation. So back then it was like horses with carriages would go on one path, walking would be on the other. Now there's like bike paths and foot paths and such. So that makes it a lot easier because it causes less friction between the different modes of transportation, and people can get places faster depending on how they want to go. It's also really, really successful because of the location of it. It's in the middle of a severely dense urban population right there in New York City, so people are going to be wanting to go somewhere with some form of nature, and that really provides that for that community. Some of the unique elements it has is that it has 18 gated entrances to the park, which each of them have their own names, so I thought that was kind of cool. They have 2 different zoos there, as well as a discovery center. They have lots and lots of memorials.
Pardon the interruption.
So,
The baseball
okay.
varsity practice this afternoon has been canceled, and the softball games that were scheduled for Frisco versus Liberty at Terry Cotton have been canceled and rescheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. varsity only. Thank you.
They also have lots of different types of memorials for famous people. For example, there's a Shakespeare Garden, which it was created back in 1913 as the Garden of the Heart, but on the 300th year anniversary of Shakespeare's death, it was dedicated to him, so now it's Shakespeare's Park. They also have Strawberry Fields, which is some open space for people to do all sorts of things like play Frisbee and play sports, and that's dedicated to John Lennon. At Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, I've actually been there, so that's really exciting because I could really look at the history of how the park that I've actually visited came to be. And it's really successful because it was built on a 5-acre little portion of recessed 8-lane freeway. So basically people, from everything that I was reading, all the sources I was getting, people were just astounded at how this park came to be, because it was literally built from pretty much nothing. It was a lot like the High Line in that way, where it was something that was created and there was like nothing that was created to something that people really enjoy and actually use all the time. So it's really successful too because it unites the uptown and the downtown or arts district portions of Dallas. So because that it connects those two, it really increases the pedestrian connectivity and socialization. It's really easily accessible by foot, trolley, bike, car, anything you can think of, you can really get there. And then they also have really big events that attract all sorts of people. So it's really interesting how they designed this really small piece of land, because when they designed it, it gives this feeling of having different rooms. Like each section feels like it's a different place, and it makes it feel a lot bigger than it actually is, which is it's really neat how they did it. Some of the things that they have there is a performance pavilion, a restaurant, and a dog park, a children's park and playground, shaded walking paths, ping pong and foosball tables, as well as reading and game areas. And they also provide free daily programs to all visitors. So it's a really neat place for anyone of any age to come and really visit and hang out, or go to the little restaurant, and that's right there. And it's right across the street from the Dallas Museum of Art, which is cool. So whenever I go there, I go straight to the park afterwards and just go hang out. So my final project was a huge thing for me. I've been working on it for several months because it's just trying to plan it all and everything. And what my mentor suggested to me is that I design plans for my very own park. So that's what I did. This is a picture of my project location. So as you can see, oh, oops, I didn't mean to do that. How do I turn it back on? That one? Okay. Sorry. Okay. I meant to press this. But right here's Frisco High School. As you guys can see, so this is where we are right now. And then right across the street on the intersection of Parkwood and Stonebrook is where my location site is. So this is a site aerial, so you can kind of see it a little more close up. It's on the top, or like in the middle, right there. That's all my site. To the right of it is a creek, and then a tree line and everything, and there's also some subdivisions over there. And then to the left and bottom corner is Frisco High School, obviously. In the process of doing this, one of the very first things that I had to do was I had to go out and take pictures of my site and kind of get an idea of ground level view to kind of see how the site works, what the different places where there are hills and such, and kind of see what the view is from the different places on it. So here's some photos that I took as I was walking around on the site, kind of taking a look at what was there and trying to imagine what I could create with this piece of land. Here's some more pictures, and I was kind of taking pictures of the existing sidewalks, the different areas and corners of the site that I could be using, and trying to figure out what I wanted this little park to be. So one of the very first things that I had to do was do something my mentor calls programming. I had to really think about who would be using it, how it would be used, why it would work the way that I want it to, when it'll be used most, whether it's going to be passive or active, and then the elements that I wanted to include. So the very first thing that I noticed when I was trying to think of these things is that a lot of students from Frisco High School, they walk across the piece of land to and from school. But they don't use the sidewalk because it's longer and it takes more time, so it's not really any point to it. So they just cut straight through the park, or the piece of land. They cut straight through the piece of land, and because it's the path of least resistance. So I really took that into consideration when trying to draw my design. So first, whenever I was answering the question of who would be using it, I said mostly high school students, since the high school's right here, then maybe some nearby residents, since there's some apartments down there, and then also the subdivisions over here, and also joggers. I see joggers who come by all the time, and maybe some teachers or even police officers, since it's all right in this area. How it would work was I wanted it to be, or like how it would be used, was I wanted it to be a transportation path on there, since people were already utilizing it in that way. And then I also want it to be a gathering space, so a place where people could come and hang out or come and eat lunch or whatever, depending on like what they were doing with their day. Why I thought it would work the way I wanted it to was, number one, it's close to the school.